You have oak trees that you don't want to do anything in the summer.
Yeah.
Oak trees get pretty big and you don't want to take out a big tree. It's valuable and it
Right.
adds a lot to your property. So you get the wrong company. Let's say you go with the cheapest estimate and they will guide you towards getting it done as soon as possible because
They want the money.
they don't want someone else get that job.
Welcome to The Boost, a podcast for home service contractors. We explore leaders and innovators in home services, their personal journeys, thoughts, and experiences with growth, marketing, and succession. We cover the good, the bad, the ugly, and its ultimate impact.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the Boost podcast. I'm Zach Wilson, Chief Marketing Officer of Local Digital Marketing for our Home Services. Today, we have Dan Maldonado from Native Tree Care, located in Cincinnati. Dan, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. So I'm Dan with Native Tree Care. I'm here out of Cincinnati, Ohio, serving the Tri-County from taking care of any tree work you might have, property maintenance, removals, and trimming some trees and making your property look good. Started my business late 2018, 2019. Very young business and still working on putting the puzzle together to make sure everything flows how it's supposed to, which I'm not sure if you ever get to that point to where it's smooth. The growing pains right now with the investment and the right equipment to do the best job for the customer, which is, anywhere from tree removals to pruning, aesthetic, and for the healthy of the home and the trees that surround a property. So whether it's for many real estate agents that are selling homes, that's an important part. Just across the board, it's Native Tree Care, which we care for a lot of the trees, and it's not specifically a tree removal company like many others.
I think that's a good point in terms of your audience and what you're trying to set out to do. I've heard from other arborists that neighborhoods with full mature trees and healthy trees generally have higher property values than neighborhoods with fewer, younger, immature trees or poorly manicured trees and things like that. Is that true? Is it something you lean into or talk about?
Absolutely. There's a lot of the big trees that have a lot of value. So if someone runs into your tree, if someone is driving along the road and crashes into the side of the tree and takes a piece of bark off or something, the first thing you'd want to do is a certified arborist that knows how to evaluate a tree and to be able to replace big tree that's been there forever and gives you a ton of benefits. Gets pretty expensive to replace. So this is if the tree was damaged and declines, it'll cost you a lot of money in removal because it will decline if it's neglected. So that's where we come into play. A lot of the times it doesn't cost you anything to give us a shout and have us come out and take a look at it. In most cases, estimates are free. And then there's also property evaluations, which might take longer and it might take some climbing to really assess a lot of the trees on your property and make sure they're safe and they're not going to cause any damage and they're healthy. So
yeah, just in terms of how all this impact your customers and your marketing, is there, from a marketing standpoint, or as we say in the home service business, service areas, is there someone that your ideal customer profile versus, someone that's not, we're talking about mature trees, we're talking about probably neighborhoods that have been around for a longer period of time. So I guess how does that play into some of your marketing? If you're looking at a new neighborhood that's in reclaimed farmland or something like that, is that a neighborhood that you kind of seek? Do you do flyers in neighborhoods that have more old growth or mature trees versus neighborhoods that have smaller trees? I mean, speak to that just from your ideal customer perspective.
okay, so the customers are scattered throughout the city. So whoever finds you and gives you a call is because they have a concern. They want to make sure their trees are healthy, not necessarily a specific location, but more of the customer. There's new home buyers. They show up, they see large trees and they don't know what to do about them. The first thing they do is seek some guidance with calling an arborist and do a property evaluation. And then as soon as me or one of my guys show up to do an evaluation. It's educating the homeowner on what kind of tree they have and what they need to do to it and what time of the year, because all trees are different, and procedures are done at different times of the year. So that's how we might gain new customers, is by educating them on what they have surrounding their property, what they need to do about it. So honestly, there's no certain neighborhood. There's more of the customer that's willing to do something about it versus not having trees as their priority until something happens.
So that being said, what's the furthest you've ever had to travel? 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? If someone calls you, is there any radius or perimeter that you're just going to say no to?
It's about 45 minutes travel from my lot. So it's northern Kentucky and most of Cincinnati, basically just the Tri-County and its surrounding. My crew today is out in Lake Winoka doing some tree removals on a newly purchased property and some maintenance. So, it's about 45 minutes out, and you would say that that's out in the outskirts, but it's a nice neighborhood. And a lot of my customers have their vacation homes.
So let's talk about that then a little bit further. Your customers, and again, what we call on the marketing side, that the ICP, your ideal customer profile, or your ideal customer persona. And you've been doing this for 5 years now, right? You mentioned vacation homes, you mentioned second homes, lake houses, and from a marketing perspective, what I immediately think about is probably higher income. So just thinking across your customer base, is there neighborhoods or socioeconomic areas of the city that don't get calls from, generally speaking, because they don't have the budget? Everybody lives probably, or is driven through the neighborhood or whatever, where a tree has fallen down or it's dead and it hasn't been taken down. And I mean, there's a simple reason why. It's expensive to do it. And,
Yep.
it's not a priority. And putting food on the table, paying your mortgage is more of a priority than, taking care of that tree. So, again, that I don't know if you've gotten as dialed in terms of, home values at this price or customers that have, this income or anything like that. Have you ever thought about any of that in terms of, who your customers are and what neighborhoods they're coming from?
We think about it on a daily basis. The neighborhood absolutely matters. Hiring the right person to spread the word and your company information matters. So having someone local, I guess we'll say a big deal. It really helps to know the neighborhood, or at least know what kind of customers we're looking for, because my crews will call me. They'll be driving through a certain neighborhood. We just completed a job and they'll be a couple of houses down and they'll say, hey, there's potential work several houses down. And they just keep pointing out different trees at different addresses. But, the best we can do is maybe drop a door hanger off, see if they're interested in getting a price. If they've never gotten a price and they're nervous about what they're going to hear. But in most cases, it's people that have trees that are falling apart above their driveways. You show up and you want to talk to them and maybe give them an estimate. It's a free estimate on site. They're not interested in and even discussing it. Automatically think that it's going to be expensive. They mention stuff like, we'll just wait until one of those branches falls on my gutter, on my roof, and then I'll have the insurance take care of it. So that's their game, just waiting for something like that to happen.
Yeah, well, I think there's an element to marketing too with all of this, that it's the right triggers and it's the buyer's journey, right? Like some people aren't ready to buy or ready to take care of that. And whether it's, money in this case, they don't want to spend the money and they want their, homeowner's insurance to take care of it, or, they just haven't deemed it valuable. And that's, that's the interesting part about the marketing side of it, is to be there and be in the right place when that customer is ready, right? That's the tricky part, and that's the balance with all this stuff, because at some point in time, if you're there and you visit them and you leave a door hanger and then you start doing flyers to that home or that neighborhood or whatever, there will be a point where they go to Google or go to their phone, Apple Maps or whatever. The hope is that the brand, the name, your face, whomever is going to actually stick out, and it's going to be like, oh yeah, I like that guy, or he was nice, he knocked on my door and he tried to help me out. And that stuff matters. And that, like you said, trying to pay it forward by, helping someone out, it will come back. It will come back to help you. But at the same time, there are tactics and strategies to all of this stuff. And it's really important how you think about the dollars that you spend on it. And because I think we were talking about before this. Right now, it's kind of a slow time for you guys right now. There might be some economic uncertainty. The wind hasn't blown in Cincinnati yet. We've had like one drop of rain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's impacting things. So there's just not as much damage. But how you thought about over the course of the 5 years in terms of investing in your marketing, investing dollars and capital, month over month in your slow seasons, in your busy season, to try and keep the calls coming in, because home services in general, that's what's important to everybody, right? The phone's got to be ringing.
Yep.
You've got to deploy your trucks and your crews. The goal is to get everybody booked
Mhm.
and 5 days a week, or even if you're lucky, 7 days a week during the summer seasons, right?
Yeah.
So just speak to that in general.
Okay. So, as they say, use them or lose them. And that's your guys that if you don't have work for them, they need to continue working. So it's important to keep your schedule full and to keep those calls coming. So I've done trees for about 19 years now. So I've been in the industry for quite some time. And I know a lot of people in my same field with nothing but tree work. A lot of the buddies across the Cincinnati or across the tri-state that have their businesses, they keep repeating the same thing, which is they spread their dollars in different platforms. So that's about the only way you're going to continue to get calls. And everyone is doing it. The longer you've been in business, the less you have to spend because you got repeat customers. So a lot of us that are starting out, I don't think there's any other way of doing it other than just relying on someone to do a good job doing your advertising, try to get your name out there.
We were talking about
The many companies that
Right.
I know that are out there using multiple platforms to continue receiving calls.
And my segue there was in a lot of different home services. If we're talking about lawn care, HVAC, what else is there that has maintenance agreements? Arborists,
Mhm.
chemicals, obviously not necessarily tree care. So do you have any maintenance plans that you can offer to people, or is that just not something in tree care that makes sense, where you're just a one and done type of client?
No, there absolutely is. What happens is a lot of the bigger HOAs will hire a landscape company. So
Gotcha.
their regular weekly grass, or however often they mow all the grass, they have arborists on staff that will go through and that will look at all the trees in the neighborhood. Part of the problem is, and you get this everywhere, there's too little arborists, and a lot of the crews that are out in the field are not arborists. They're arborists, they're not certified arborists. So
Right.
they say, you got this job and that job for today, and as soon as you're done, you go home. So what do? They show up, and even if it's a big company with a good reputation, I'm sure they keep track of their employees, make sure they do a good job, but you don't get everybody on the same board. And I've worked for some that I've seen a lot of their habits, and they just run out and they hurry up and they do what they need to do and they go home because they want to go. Everyone wants to go home early and have their day paid for. So same thing with the landscape companies that work for big subdivisions that have HOAs and they do all the maintenance. They do the trees too. Again, they do every tree along the sidewalk and the street. They trim them back so they don't interfere with the sidewalk, or for the vehicles, the garbage trucks and anything high. A lot of the landscapers, and it surprises me every time on how little landscapers know about trees, if they're hitting themselves in the head every time they're mowing someone's yard and they don't know how to do the most basic pruning to just fix it.
Right.
Or even sell the job to the customer and say, hey, I've been hitting my head every week, and you'd benefit from a better looking property if you just cleaned it up, and I can do that for you.
Right.
And it seems like they're on a lot of properties on a daily basis, more than us, because they got to do more yards to be able to come up with their dollars at the end of the day. So,
well, I think too, there's an element there of people in general, customers, homeowners, they don't value their trees. Just anecdotally, my neighbors, a lot of them, they just like, oh, I don't care, let it die, whatever. Let that, like, 40, 60, 80, 100-year-old tree die, or you're just gonna like cut it down. And we happen to have a lot of ash trees on our property. I think we have 7. I just did the quick math in terms of, like, if one of those, they're anywhere from 40 to 80 years old, and if one of the ones far away from the house dies, it's not going to be that expensive to take down. But if one of them near the house dies, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars to have that tree removed. And the cost every couple years to maintain good health of that tree is pennies on the dollar compared to what it would take to have that tree removed. Just based on our arborist, I think I calculated, if there was one that's real close to our house, and I calculated that just treating that tree alone versus taking it down, it will take me almost 20 years of treatments to get close to the dollar to have it removed. In Cincinnati area, the ash trees are extremely vulnerable. So the marketing side of it from your perspective, and how can you make people aware from an educational standpoint that, like, maintenance and tree care, it's in the name, right? Native tree care is important, and that if they are doing tree care and they are maintaining their trees, that it's going to be better for their property value. It's going to be better for the trees. So again, thinking at the marketing side of it, we're talking door hangers, we're talking flyers, we're talking about your website, we're talking about, the brand of Native Tree Care. I think the tactic here is talking about preventative tree measurement and being a good steward of your property versus reactive, right? There's a difference between, oh, my tree got hit by lightning and I have to do something, right? You have to do something when your tree gets hit by lightning, or a wind shear comes and you've got a tree on your house or whatever. But then every couple of years, being proactive and pruning your trees so that the wind shear comes, it doesn't take down half your tree. Or when a bad storm hits, it's your tree is pruned properly so that it's not going to take down the whole tree. So, I mean, talk about this from like an education standpoint, and, things that you do or you think you can do better to help people understand that pruning is important. Here's why. But how do you get in front? How do you get in front of that?
It takes, I'd say, 80% of me that knows about trees trying to give the information to you, which you're going to distribute all the information. So I'd say 80-20. You're going to spread out whatever I'm going to give you as far as information, which is educational to the homeowners on this is the time of the year to do that. Because if not, then you could run into the risk of your tree breaking out if you don't do this kind of pruning to that kind of tree. It's that close to the house, or wasn't maintained when it was young. It wasn't nurtured. So we can see declining trees and about how fast they're gonna last. If they're over your driveway, then it's not only going to cost a windshield or a hood or whatever damage, it's going to also cost the same amount for the removal of the tree anyhow, because a certain amount of it broke off to where it's not going to make it.
Right.
So it's a lot of educating. I know trees, so I have to give you a lot of the information that you need to spread out, and everything at the right time of the year. So you have oak trees that you don't want to do anything in the summer because oak trees get pretty big, and you don't want to take out a big tree. It's valuable and it adds a lot to your property. So you get the wrong company. Let's say you go with the cheapest estimate, and they will guide you towards getting it done as soon as possible because
they want the money.
They don't want to miss out on the opportunity of letting someone else get that job. And specifically, just yesterday, I ran into one of my buddies, same property at the same time, and they got an estimate from both of us, and gave the homeowner my 2 cents and their written proposal. And, we've known each other for a long time. We used to work together, so we're standing there, and he gives his part, and he.
This is a competitor.
This is my competitor.
Yeah.
But
also a friend.
Yeah. So he guides the homeowner on what the homeowner would like to hear, which is if we take this much off, you're really not going to worry about having to really retrim. trim a lot of this stuff over the top of your house. You can only take so much off certain trees, and the structure is really important. So you take off two big leads on one side, on a hillside, it's going to fall over, it's going to uproot. You got winter around the corner, so the ground's going to be pretty soft. So you add a lot of moisture, add a leaning tree and some strong winds, and something like that's just going to fall over. But the homeowner wants to hear, I want you to take as much off as you can to where I don't have to really pay for this in the next couple of years,
Right.
or
Right.
ever. So he tells them, yeah, we'll take all of this branch off and all of that branch. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, the only thing that's going to be left is the stem of the tree, which has a heavy lean towards the bottom of the hill. There's a fence that, if he was $100 cheaper, $200 cheaper, you're not going to replace that fence. And you still have to pay to get that tree removed. You're not going to just leave a fallen tree in your backyard because you don't want to pay for it. It's just something that has to, they had pets and everything. So not to say that it's not going to hurt any of their pets, but they could get out. So that, and then their neighbor and everything, whether they have pets or not. So it's just a lot of educating the homeowner on making sure they do a little bit of homework on who they choose, and not necessarily go with the cheapest estimate.
Yeah. And I think that's another, just from a tactical perspective. And I was going to ask about this. I know you're working on a LSA campaign right now. You were telling me before the call. So you get a lot of calls, right? And as you gain customers, couple things, right? On your intakes, you're getting a call and new customer problem. Do you ask every customer where they heard about you or how they found you to know where your marketing dollars are going to work? Did they find you on Google? Did they get referred to you by a friend? Did they find you on, Bing? Is that a part of your customer intake?
Not as detailed on specifically, but a lot of what happens is we naturally fall into this groove of automatically, if it's through Home Advisor or Angie's or whatnot, then we automatically know where it comes from. Or if we just get a random call, then it's more than likely this LSA that's working, because you can really tell by the customer that you're talking to whether they know someone that referred me to them, because they will point it out right away. I was giving your number, and it's one of the first things that comes up by such and such. So you'll know if it's someone they're friends with or family members, because I'll point it out right away.
Gotcha. Does anyone ever say, I was searching tree care or tree maintenance or, tree trimming or whatever? Did they ever say, like, I saw that you had amazing reviews on Google, or does that ever come out?
Honestly, not too much, maybe 5% or less. No one ever mentions anything like that.
It's interesting. Okay. Yeah. What are different channels? Google LSA, Google paid ads, Thumbtack, I think you mentioned, Angie's, you mentioned Home Advisors. Over the years, what's been the best bang for your buck, or something that you've not stopped doing because the return on investment is just that obvious? Or is there something? Are you constantly, trying new things, trying to adapt and find that, special formula, if you will, for marketing dollars?
Again, at the end of the day, it's trying a multitude of platforms to be able to just consistently keep these calls coming in. And we always call each other. A lot of the people that know each other that have our small businesses are always calling each other. Hey, what have you been doing? Where are you getting your calls? Who did you hire? How are they working out? How much are you spending? And, everyone has a different size company and different goals.
Yeah.
So we kind of eventually go our own separate ways, but we fall back into the hands of whoever calls you the quickest, whoever gives you the quickest results. And you have to be aggressive about it, which is like one that has a bad reputation, which is Home Advisor, that's now Angie's. And there's Networks, which is a branch of that. I'd like to say the worst one, because they throw the same lead to just so many people. And that's where you have a lot of the uneducated tree guys that are mainly focused with just cutting your tree down. So they don't go into specifics. They don't do such a good job with pruning, and they'll do that. But I show up to a house and I can tell right away. I'm like, hey, it looks like you've been going with the cheapest estimate,
or DIY.
The homeowner's been doing it.
Yeah,
and it's one of the two, either the homeowner or they went with the cheapest estimate.
Which if you've got I mean, to be fair, I'm a homeowner and, you get one or two branches, you got a chainsaw. It's a path of least resistance. And, it's just like, hey, this can't be that hard, right? And
Yeah.
it's not, it's not at the end of the day. However, there is a lot of nuance to it. Like, you mentioned timing, right? Like when you cut a branch off an oak tree, right? Like, don't do it in the summer because, you're going to get some bug infestation, right? And that's going to probably kill that oak tree or do some damage to it and so on and so forth. And that's what you pay for, is you're paying for that expertise and you're paying for, that knowledge. And again, I think this is a general problem in home services. And, maybe it's a branding problem, maybe it's a marketing problem, is that I can do this myself, right? Like my gutter is falling down. I'll just get on a ladder and, hammer it back up. Or, this tree is falling over and it's like, wow, I'll just cut it down or whatever. And I'll, not necessarily think about the implications of that tree falling down or having that dead branch over your driveway that could impale one of your kids playing in the driveway, right? That's another thing. It's like, well, I don't need to worry about that dead branch. It's just going to fall down. Well, this is a horrible story I read about a couple of years ago. There was that scenario, a dad lost one of his little kids, but it was just like, holy crap, like this is the world of preventative, whether you knew about it or neglected it or whatever, I mean, these are just tragedies too. Like, it could just be a freak accident and it could have been a healthy branch or something. And just, who knows, but
it's a part of your home maintenance. So a lot of homeowners turn it into an outdoors activity with the
Right,
kids.
right.
And that's how it starts.
Right.
So a lot of the times I get a call is where the wife butts in just enough to where they talk the husband out of doing the work. My husband really wanted to do it. I really talked him out of it. So we need your help.
my in-laws, my father-in-law is a known masochist when it comes to pruning, and you can pull up to their house and know it's a DIY every day of the week. You trimmed this, someone else trimmed this. And my mother-in-law is just like, you are not allowed to trim any trees. You are a hack. And he is. I mean, yeah, it's an activity and I want to be the steward of my own property and I can do it and yada yada. But yeah, I mean, it's a trade, and there was a Malcolm Gladwell, a decade and a half ago, had this tenet of 10,000 hours. And, it takes you 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. And 10,000 hours, quick math on 10,000 hours is there's about 2,000 working hours in a year, 2,000 working hours. And it's 5 years to become an expert doing that every single day. There is no homeowner on anywhere that is going to get that amount of practice as a tradesman in any capacity, whether it's a roofer, a gutter person, maybe mowing your lawn. If you mow your own lawn, you might
get there.
You might get there in your lifetime. It's going to be a big lawn and you're going to be mowing it for a long period of time. But same thing with tree, it's like I cut down one limb every 3 years or something like that. You're doing this 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. So Dan, thanks for coming out. We really appreciate you coming today and talking to us about your business, where you're going and where you want to take it. Just really quickly, where can anyone in the Cincinnati area, where can they find you?
You're in the need of any vegetation management. I'm at nativetreecare.net on my cell phone all the time, 513-301-5682. If you need something, just give me a shout. We'll be happy to come over and give you a free estimate.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for having me.